Good day. These are the folks who will be discussing the first voyage around the world. And these are the things you will learn after watching our video presentation. First, you will identify credible and authentic primary sources that could be used in reconstructing and analyzing the history of the Filipino people from pre-colonial times to the present. Then, you will analyze the context, content, and perspective of different kinds of primary sources and determine how they affected the history of Filipino people. And lastly, you will develop critical and analytical skills as they are exposed to primary sources.
The first voyage around the world, ni Antonio Pigafetta, is a narrative and cartographic record of discovery and exploration in early history. This book was taken from the chronicles of contemporary voyagers and navigators of the 16th century. One of them was an Italian nobleman, Antonio Pigafetta, who accompanied Ferdinand Magellan in his faithful circumnavigation of Pigafetta's work. Instantly became a classic that prominent literary men in the West, like William Shakespeare, Michel de Montaigne, Guillaume Battista Brico, referred to the book in their interpretation of the New World. So in this lesson, we will travel back in time and will explain history and the important events that happened. So who is Antonio Pigafetta? Antonio Pigafetta is also known by the name of Antonio Lombardo. He was born in Vicenza around 1490 and died in the same city in 1534. He traveled with the Portuguese explorer Ferdinand Magellan and his crew. His travelogue is one of the most important primary sources in the study of pre-colonial Philippines. His account was also a major referent to the events leading to Magellan's arrival in the Philippines. Next is Ferdinand Magellan, and most of us already heard and know many stories about him, as he is one of the first European who visited the Philippines. Ferdinand Magellan was born on February 3, 1480 in Sabrosa, Portugal. He died on April 27 in Mactan, Philippines. He is a Portuguese navigator and explorer who sailed under the flags of both Portugal and Spain. From Spain, he sailed around South America, discovering the Strait of Magellan and across of Pacific. Though he was killed in the Philippines, one of his ships continued westward to Spain, accomplishing the first circumnavigation. And when we say circumnavigation, it is sailing or traveling all around the world, and the voyage successfully terminated by the navigator named Juan Sebastian Elcano. Now we will proceed to the narratives. Ferdinand Magellan was sent to lead an expedition of 5 ships with 237 men. On August 10, 1519, the ships departed from Port Spain for what became the first circumnavigation of the globe. After a long journey, on March 16, 1521, Magellan sighted the island of Samar, and he named it as the archipelago of Saint Lagares, for it was discovered on the feast day of said saint. Upon arrival in Cebu, he befriended the chieftain and erected a cross for the natives to adore every day. Then he proceeded to the island of Mactan, where he met his death from Lapu-Lapu. With heavy hearts, the crew of 2 remaining ships, Trinidad and Victoria, left Archipelago and returned to Spain. Passing by Portugal, the ship Trinidad was confiscated by the Portuguese. Only the ship Victoria successfully reached their origin and completed the circumnavigation of the world. And one of the few crew members who returned to Spain is Antonio Pigafetta. And before we proceed to the story, we prepared a short video for you to watch.
On March 16, 1521, Philippines was discovered by Magellan. They were sailing day and night across the big ocean until they saw a small Limasawa island. Magellan landed in Limasawa at noon. The people met him very welcome on the shore. They did not understand the speaking they have done, because Castilla get at waray-waray man. When Magellan landed in Cebu City, Raha Humabon met him, they were very happy. All people were baptized and built the Church of Christ, and that's the beginning of our Catholic life. When Magellan visited in Mactan to Christianize them everyone, but Lapu-Lapu met him on the shore and dragged Magellan to go back home. Then Magellan got so mad, ordered his men to come up flats. Mactan Island we could not grab, 'cause Lapu-Lapu is very hard. Then the battle began at dawn, bolos and spears versus guns and cannons. When Magellan was hit on his neck, he stumbled down and cried and cried, "Oh mother, mother, I am sick. Call the doctor very quick. Doctor, doctor, shall I die? Tell my mama do not cry. Tell my mama do not cry. Tell my mama do not cry." That's the end of Magellan in the island of Mactan long time ago, ladies and gentlemen.
The first voyage around the world, Antonio Pigafetta. Thereupon the Captain General in wrath went ashore with 40 armed men, who burned some 40 or 50 houses together with many boats, and they departed immediately, pursuing the same course. Before they landed, some of their sick men begged them if they should kill any man or woman to bring entrails to them, as they believed that they would recover immediately. When they wounded any of those people with their crossbow shafts, which completely through their loins, from one side to the other, others were wounded in the breast due to sick, which moved them with great compassion. Those people, seeing them departing, followed with more than 100 boats for more than 1 week. They saw some women in their boats who were crying out and tearing their hair for those. He believed one of those whom they have killed.
Each one of those people lives according to his own will, for they have no senior, they go naked. And some are bearded and have dyed black hair that reaches to the waist. They wear a small palm leaf hats, as do the Albanians. They are as tawny, but are born white. Their teeth are red and black, for they think that is most beautiful. The women go naked, except that they wear a narrow strip of bark as thin as paper, which grows between the tree and the bark of the palm before crevice. They are good-looking and delicately formed and lighter complexions than the men, and wear the hair which is exceedingly black, loose and hanging quite down to the ground. The women do not work in the fields, but stay in their houses. They are weaving mats, baskets, and other things needed in their house from the palm leaves. They eat coconuts, camotes, birds, figs, one palm in length, or what we call bananas, sugar cane, and flying fish beside other things. They anoint the body and the hair with coconut and Bernas oil. Their houses are all built with covered wood with planks and touched with leaves of the fig tree, or what we call banana tree. 2 fathoms long, and they have floors and windows. The rooms and the beds are all furnished with the most beautiful palm leaf mats. They sleep on palm straw, which is very soft and fine. They use no weapons except a kind of spear pointed with at the end. Those people are poor, but ingenious and very thievish. But on account of which we call those 3 islands, the island of Landrini, their amusement men and women is to plow the seas with those small boats of theirs. Those boats resemble fossiler, but are narrower, and some are black, some are white, and others are red. At the side opposite the sail, they have a large piece of wood pointed at the top, with poles laid across it and resting on the water, in order that the boats may sail more safely. The sail is made from palm leaves sewn together and is shaped like a Latin sail. For rudders, they use a certain blade resembling a hard shovel, which have a piece of wood at the end. They can change stern and bow at the wheel, and those boats resemble the dolphins which leap in the water from wave to wave. Those Landrini taught, according to the signs which they made, that there were no other people in the world but themselves. At dawn on Saturday, March 16, 1521, we came upon a highland at a distance of 300 leagues from the islands of Landrini, an island named Samal, or what we call Samar. The following day, the Captain General decided to land on another island, which was uninhabited and lay to the right of the above-mentioned island. In order to be more secure and to get water and have some rest, he had 2 tents set up in the shore for the sick and had a sow killed for them. On Monday afternoon, March 18, we saw a boat coming toward us with 9 men in it. Therefore, the Captain General ordered that no one should move or say a word without his permission. When those men reached the shore, their chief went immediately to the Captain General, giving signs of joy because of our arrival. 5 of the most ornately adorned of them remained with us, while the rest went to get some others who were fishing, and so they all came. The Captain General, seeing that they were reasonable men, ordered food to be set before them, and gave them red cups, mirrors, and combs, bells, ivory, boccasin, and other things. When they saw the captain's courtesy, they presented fish, a jar of palm wine which they called uraka or arak, figs more than 1 palm long, bananas, and others which were smaller and more delicate, and 2 coconuts. They had nothing else then but made signs with their hands that they would bring umay or rice, and coconuts and many other articles of food within 4 days. Coconuts are the fruit of the palm tree, just as we have bread, wine, oil, and vinegar. So, those people get everything from that tree. They get wine in the following manner. they bore a hole into the heart of the said palm at the top called palmito, from which distills a liquor which resembles white mist. That liquor is sweet, but somewhat tart, and is gathered in canes of bamboo, as thick as the leg and thicker. They fasten the bamboo to the tree at evening for the morning, and in the morning for the evening. The palm bears of fruits, namely the coconut, which is as large as the head, or thereabouts. Its outside is green and thicker than 2 fingers. Certain filaments are found in that husk, whence is made cord for binding together and their boats. Under that there is a hard shell. There is a white marrow substance 1 finger in thickness, which they eat fresh with meat and fish as we do bread, and it has a taste resembling the almond. It could be dried and made into bread. There is a clear, sweet water in the middle of that marrow substance, which is very refreshing. When that water stands for a while after having been collected, it congeals and becomes like an apple. When the natives wish to make oil, they take that coconut and allow the marrow substance and the water to putrefy. Then they boil it and it becomes oil like butter. When they wish to make vinegar, they allow only the water to putrefy and then place it in the sun. And the vinegar results like that made from white wine. Milk can also be made from it, for we made some. We scrape that marrow substance and then mix the scrapings with its own water, which we strain through a cloth, and so obtain milk like goat's milk. Those palms resemble date palms, but although not smooth, they are less nutty than the latter. A family of 10 persons can be supported on 2 trees by utilizing one of them during 1 week and the other during the other 8 days for the wine. For if they did otherwise, the trees would dry up and they last a century.
March 25, Holy Monday, the day of Our Lady. In rainy afternoon, he went to the side of the ship. He was asleep and fall down into the sea. No one saw him falling to the water. He began to cry, but he believed with the mercy of the Virgin until he was rescued with a small boat. March 28, Thursday, before they anchored near the island, they saw a fire. There was a baroto with 8 men passengers approaching to their ship. They talked with the men, but they did not allow to enter and let them anchored with a little distance from the island. 2 hours later, they saw 2 balanghay approaching full of men with their king. They had a little conversation and the king understood it. The king ordered his men to enter the flagship. They gave the captain a large bar of gold and a basket full of ginger. The captain thanked the king heartily, but he would not accept it. Holy Friday, the slave was their interpreter, was sent to the captain to ask if they had the food to carry to the ships. And the king immediately told his men to go to the ship, and they bring 3 porcelain jars with full of raw rice covered with leaves, 2 large dorados, and other things. As a return, captain gave the king with a red and yellow colored cloth made in the Turkish fashion and fine red cap. Mirrors and some knives was also given to the king's men. The captain told the king that he wanted to be kasi-kasi with him or to be brother with him. The king replied that he also wanted that kind of relationship because the captain came to the island as friends, not enemies. The Captain General took a man clothed as a soldier and placed him in the middle of the 3 men with swords and daggers, striking him in various parts of his body. The Captain General told the slave to tell the king that one of those soldiers was worth 100 of his men. The captain said that he had 200 men in each ship armed in that manner. He presented the king with cuirassiers, swords, and bucklers, as well as a review. Then he led the king to the ship deck, which is placed above at the stern, and carried his sea chart and compass. He told the king through the interpreter how he had discovered the strait and how many moons he had been without seeing land, which astounded the king. Finally, he told the king that if he pleased him, he would want to send 2 of his soldiers with him to show them some of his possession. He went in a company with one of the other men after the king said he was willing.
After the king agreed to the Captain General, they then proceed to the king's island. Pigafetta is one of the companions, so he is surely able to witness the ceremony. They first led them under the bamboo covering where there is a balanghay, or which we refer to as a large boat. And there, they sat down and had a conversation using signs. They ate the food served for them, and also they can see there the signs that the king and his men usually do when they are drinking. So all of them are out to follow to show their respect to the king's custom. During that time, the king and others saw Pigafetta writing, and the thought of him writing names of things in their language is what made them amazed. The supper time was announced. They shared lots of food and they ate, doing the same signs and ceremonies as what the king's custom is. They entered the palace after dinner, and again, there were food and drinks served. They had a chance to meet the king's eldest son, which is the prince. I think it is one of the most good thing that Pigafetta experienced during his voyage. It is the moment that he met the prince personally. They even slept together with the king's son, since the king left the prince with them during that night, as the king went to sleep first. The day has come and it's time for the voyagers to go. But before that, the king came to Pigafetta first, held him by his hand, and directed him to where they had supper the previous night. But the boat came to fetch them, which is a sign that it was their time to go. They went to another island with another king on their ship to take another trip. And there, they see a luxurious island. Dishes are gold, and some portions of the house of the king is also gold, as told by the king himself. This kind of king this time lives his life magnificently. It can be seen by the way he suits himself, by his own property, and even on his tooth, gold can be spotted. And so imagine how this king is a man of luxury. His island, by the way, is named Butuan in Calagan. And for those kings, Raya Kulambu and Raya Sawi as the second king, Raya Kulambu as the first king, decides to go hunting on that same island if they wish to meet one another. During the time of Sunday morning, there will be a mass. Together with the priest and other men that are in charge of the preparation for the mass is the interpreter sent by the Captain General. The purpose of that interpreter is for them to be able to pass the message to the king that they will not dine with him, but to tell him that there will be a mass. Just when everything's settled, they arrive at the place where mass is to be held, and then starts the mass and kept the mass going until it ends.
The Captain General arranged a fencing tournament. To the interpreter, he said that they were the standard given to him by the emperor, his sovereign. The Captain General asked them whether they were Muslims or heathen and what was their belief. In their reply, they called God Abba. He wished to set up a cross in that place, and it was the summit of the highest mountain. The king thanked him, and they replied that they were satisfied, and these the two kings they took their leave. The kings were given peace. They made an honor as the captain carried the cross to the nails in the ground. He said that he wished to set it up to the place for their benefit, for whenever any of the ships came, he would already have been there by that cross and would do nothing to displace or harm their property. If any of their men were captured, they were set free immediately on that cross being shown. It was necessary to set that cross on the summit of the highest mountain, so that on seeing it every morning they might adore it. And if they did that, neither thunder, lightning, nor storms would harm them in the least. They said that they have no other worship, and that they have their culture on raising their hands, claps, and their faces to the sky and called their Abba. The captain was very glad on seeing that the first king raised his hand to the sky and said that he wished that it were possible for him to make the captain see his love for him. The Captain General had him ask the player whether he had any enemies, so that he might go with his ships to destroy them and to render them obedient to him. The king said that he indeed had 2 islands hostile to him, but it was not season to go there. The captain told him that if God would again allow him to return to those districts, he would bring many men and then would do the king's enemies subject to him by force. He said that he was about to go to the dinner and that he would return afterward across set up to the summit of the highest mountain. After the dinner, they all returned dressed, and in the afternoon they went together with the 2 kings to the summit of the highest mountain. Because they get sweat, the general ordered them to get food. They suggest 3, namely Ceylon, Zubu, and Kalaghat. After the cross was erected in position, each of them repeated the Paternoster and an Ave Maria and adored the cross, and then descended through their cultivated fields and went to the place where their Balanghay was. The captain sent him some men, but kings ate and drank so much that they slept all day. Their men did nothing on that day, but they worked the next 2 days. When they reached the summit, the Captain General told them that he esteemed highly have sweated for them, for since the cross was there, it could be not be great use for them. The kings had some coconuts bath so that they might refresh themselves. The captain asked the king for a pallet, for he intended to depart the following morning, and he would treat them as if they were the kings themselves and would leave one of us hostage. The kings replied that they have every hour he wished the pilots were at his command, but that night the first king changes his mind in the morning when they were about to depart. They said a word to the Captain General, asking him for the luck for him to wait 2 days until he should have rice harvested, and other trifles attended too. He asked the Captain General to send him some men to help him so that it might be done sooner, and it said that he intended to act as their pilot himself. Some said to excuse them that they were slightly sick. One of those people brought them a broth of porringer rice and also 8 or 10 pigs passing together or barter them for a knife which at most was worth 3 quaternions. When one of their men went ashore for those water, one of those people wanted to give him a pointed crown of massive gold of the size of a colonna, 4 strings of glass beads, but the captain refused to let him bother, so that the natives should learn that the very being and that they prized the merchandise more than the gold. The captain, seeing that the native cared for nothing but a knife, they called him to look at other things. He put his hand to his purse and wished to give him 1 wheel for those things, but the native refused it. The captain showed him a ducat, but he would not accept that either. Finally, the captain tried to give him a dauphiny worth of 2 ducats, but he would take nothing but a knife, and that accordingly the captain had one given to him. Those people are naked and painted but wearing a piece of woven from a tree, especially women with a long hair. There are dogs, cats, swine, mouse, goats, rice, ginger, coconuts, figs, oranges, lemons, millet, panicum, sorghum, wax, and a quantity of coal in that island. The place is located in 25 leagues from Aquala and is called Mazawa. They are very drinkers. whole spears and their ears were filled of gold. There are people are constantly chewing a fruit which they call arca and which resemble a pear. They cut the fruit into 4 parts and wrap it with leaves their tree which they call betel. Those leaves resemble the leaves of mulberry. They mix it with lime and when they have chewed it thoroughly they spit it out. It makes the mouth exceedingly red. All the people in those parts of the world use it for it is very calming to the heart. And if they cease to use it, they will die. It lies in a latitude of 9 and 2/3 degrees toward the Arctic Pole and in the longitude of 162 degrees from the line of demarcation.
They remained in Mazua and then they laid their course before towards northwest, passing the 5 islands of Ceylon, Bohol, Canighan, Baybay, and Gatighan. This is a distance of 20 leagues from Mazua to Gatighan. They set westward from Gatighan, but the king of Mazua could not follow them closely, and consequently, they awaited for him near 3 islands named Pulo, Ticubon, Luzon. April 7, they entered the port of Zubu, passing the many villages where they saw many houses built upon logs. Zubu, or now what we call the Cebu, is the largest and the most trade island. The captain ordered that the sails were lowered and arranged as if for battle, and all the artillery was fired, an action which caused great fear to those people. When they reached the Cebu, they found a vast crowd of people together with the king, all of whom had been fighted by the mortars. The interpreter told them that was it is their customs when entering into such places, as a sign of peace and friendship. The king and his men were reassured, and the king had asked them by his governor what they wanted. The interpreter replied that his master was the captain of the greatest king and prince in the world, and that he was going to discover Molucco. The king told him that he was welcome, but that it is the custom for all ships that enter their ports to pay tribute. The king of Cebu wanted Magellan and his men to pay tribute to them, but Magellan refused and told the translator that they are working for the king of Spain and threatened him with war. Thereupon, the Muslim merchants said to the king that these men are the same who have conquered Calicut, Malacca, and all India Major. The interpreter understood it all and told the king that his master's king was more powerful in them and ships than the king of Portugal, that he was the king of Spain and emperor of all Christians, and that if the king did not care to be his friend, he would next time send so many men that he would destroy him. The Muslim related everything to the king, who thereupon said that he would deliberate with his men and would answer the captain on the following day. After they had refreshed themselves, they returned and were told everything. The king of Maswa, who was the most influential after the king and the seigneur of a number of islands, went ashore to speak to the king of the great courtesy of Captain General. Monday morning, their notary, together with their interpreter, they went to Zubu. The king asked the notary whether there was more than one captain in that company, and whether that captain wished him to bid review to the emperor, his master. The notary replied in the negative, but the captain wished only to trade with him and with no others. The king said that he was satisfied, and that if the captain wished to become his friend, he should send him a drop of blood from his right arm, that he himself would do the same to him as a sign of the sincerest friendship. The interpreter told the king that since he decided to maintain the custom, he should commence, and so he did. Tuesday morning, the king of Maswa came to the ships with the Muslim. He saluted the Captain General in behalf of the King of Cebu, and said that the King of Cebu was collecting as much food to give to them, and that after dinner he would send one of his nephews and 2 others of his shipmen to make peace. Magellan had one of his men armed with his own arms, and had Muslim told that they all could in that manner. The Muslims were frightened, but Magellan told to them to not frighten because their arms were soft toward their friends and harsh towards their enemies. The captain did that so that the Muslim, who seemed more intelligent than the others, might tell it to the king.
So the king's nephew, the prince, arrived at the ships after dinner with the king of Mazawa, the Muslim, the governor, the chief constable, and 8 chiefs to make peace with them. Then the captain general sat in a red velvet chair while the main men sat in leather seats and the rest sat on floor mats. Through the interpreter, the captain general inquired whether they spoke in secret or in public, and whether the prince and the king of Mazawa had the authority to make peace. They responded by saying that they talked in public and that they had the authority to make peace. The Captain General said a lot about of peace and begged for God to reaffirm it in heaven. They claimed that they had never heard someone say such things before, but that they were delighted to hear them. When the captain noticed that they were willing to listen and respond, he proceeded to make arguments to persuade them to adopt faith. When he inquired as to who would succeed to the seigneury after the king's death, he was told that the king has no sons but only daughters, the eldest of whom was the bride of his nephew, the prince. So in this line, they claim that as dads and mothers became older, they will no longer honored but their children were. Then the captain explained to them that God created the sky, the earth, the sea, and everything else, and that He had commanded us to honor our fathers and mothers, and that anyone who did not do so would be condemned to eternal fire. That we are all descended from Adam and Eve, our first parents. That we have an immortal spirit and a variety of other faith-related topics. All excitedly pleaded with the captain to leave them 2 men or at least 1 to teach them the faith and promised to treat them with great respect. But the captain told them that he couldn't leave any men with them at that time, but that if they wanted to become Christians, their priest would baptize them and that he would bring priests and friars to teach them about their faith the next time they came. They all sobbed with delight when they replied that they would first speak to their monarch and then they would become Christians. Then the Captain General informed them that they should not become Christians out of fear or to please them, but out of their own free will, and that he would not punish anyone who wanted to follow their own laws, but that Christians would be treated better than the rest. They all yelled out in unison that they did not have free will. The captain then told them that if they became Christians, he would leave them a suit of armor because his king had told him that he couldn't have intercourse with their women without committing a major sin, and that if they, the women, became Christians, the devil will no longer appear to them until they die. Then he stated that they were unable to respond to the captain's lovely words, but that they had placed themselves in his hands and that he should treat them as his most devoted servants. Weeping, the captain hugged them and clasping one of the prince's hands and one of the king's between his own, told them that it was through his confidence in God and his sovereign that he had been able to save them. Then the captain had refreshments given to them once the peace was signed. The prince and king of Mazawa then handed some basket of rice, swine, goats, and fowls to the captain general on behalf of their king, pleading with him to pardon them. Because such things were little to someone like him, the captain presented the prince with a nice white linen cloth, a crimson cup, glass bead strings, and a gilt glass drinking cup. Certain spectacles are really useful in those areas. He didn't give the king of Mazawa a present because he had already given him a kambaya robe and other items. He alternated between giving one thing and another to the others. Then he sent a yellow and violet silk robe and a fine red cup, some strings of glass beads, all in a silver dish, and 2 gleaming drinking cups in their hands, to the king of Zubo through them and another. When they arrived in the city, they discovered that the king in his palace surrounded by a large crowd. He was seated on a palm mat on the ground with only a cotton towel between his legs and a scarf embroidered with a needle around his head, a valuable necklace around his neck, and 2 huge gold earrings affixed in his ears, set round with priceless gems. He was small and chubby, and he had fire tattoos in various designs. They dressed him in the robe, put the cap on his head, and gave him the other items. And they presented the beads to him by kissing them and placing them on his head. He accepted it by doing the same, like kissing them. Afterwards, the monarch then made them eat some of those eggs and drink from those tin reds. The others, his troops, told him of the captain's comment about peace and his exhortation to them to become Christians there. The king also requested that they should stay for supper with him, but they informed him that they could not be unable to do so. So after that, they said their goodbyes. Then the prince led them to his home, where 4 young girls were playing instruments. One on a drum similar to them but resting on the ground. Then the second is striking 2 suspended metallic discs alternately with a stick wrapped somewhat thickly at the end with palm cloth. Then the third has a large gong in the same manner, and the fourth 2 small gongs held in her hand, striking once against the other, producing a sweet sound. Lastly, dogs, cats, rice, millet, panicum, sorgo, ginger, figs, oranges, lemons, sugarcane, garlic, honey, coconuts, nangkas, gourds, various kinds of flesh, palm wine, and gold may all be found on that island. It is a big island with an excellent harbor and 2 entrances, one to the west and one to the east-northeast. It is located at a latitude of 10 degrees north of the Arctic Pole and a longitude of 164 degrees east of the demarcation line. Zubu is the name of the creature. They had heard about Maluku before the captain's death. Then those individuals play a copper-stringed violin. And that is all for our report of Group 1 about the first voyage around the world. Thank you for watching.